He is then shot. Gorky's one-time friend, Ishak Barbel, a writer, shot. A young poet, Boris Kornilov, shot. His wife, Olga Bergholz, a poet, is imprisoned and miscarries. Now she will never bear children.
I'm crushed, crippled. Why did they torture me? They took out my soul, searched it with their stinking fingers, spat into it, then stuck it back and said, go and live.
Gorky addresses his anxious writers. He informs them that the government has given them everything and deprived them of only one thing, the right to compose their work poorly. To write poorly, he suggests, is not to praise Stalin or his works. Ignore this at your peril, Gorky advises them. More than half of his audience will eventually be shot. In defiance, a protest poem is written in great secrecy. We exist without sensing our country beneath us. 10 steps away, our words can't be heard. But where there are enough of us for half a conversation, they always commemorate the Kremlin mountaineer. His fat fingers slimy as worms, his words dependable as weight. Stalin ferrets out the author and takes hideous revenge on Osip Mandelstam, one of Russia's greatest 20th century poets. The frightened Mandelstam is forced to write a panegyric to Stalin. The sick old poet produces the complimentary poem. Stalin then sentences him to a lingering and painful death. He is declared an enemy of the people and sent to rot in the gulags, where he goes insane, dies, and is buried in a mass grave. The strongest minds in Soviet literature bend to Stalin's will. Standing like sentinels at Stalin's portrait, writer Mikhail Zoschenko and future Nobel Prize winner Boris Pasternak pay him homage. Stalin is a masterful manipulator of his image makers. For the sycophants, there is praise, privilege, celebrity, and awards of money, country villas, and trips abroad. But best of all, momentary immunity. An ardent Stalinist, Alexander Fadyeev, replaces Maxim Gorky, who dies mysteriously. Stalin forces Fadyeev to pass judgment on his fellows. This writer will live, that writer will die, and the other will go to the gulags. It haunts his soul, and Fadyeev kills himself, leaving a note, I have no strength to live, as art is destroyed and cannot be rebuilt. Stalin, having demonstrated that the sword is mightier than the pen, sets out to perfect the myth-making device favored by every tyrant since the time of Nero, the spectacle. Writer Lev Razgon.
Stalin loved spectacles. Well, all dictators are extremely fond of spectacles. But Stalin loved not just ordinary spectacles. He loved spectacles involving masses of people. The people were supposed to demonstrate socialist uniformity. Thousands of people, all doing exactly the same thing at the same time, all acting as one. You see, our clever organizers knew how to please Stalin by using people as constructions. turning them into complicated structures in which a man was just a nut and bolt of construction material. It was all part of Stalin's system of mind control, which was brought to perfection.
One of the men who creates these spectacles for Stalin is Vsevolod Meyerholt. He is an avant-garde stage director with an international reputation. But Stalin, who enforces blind obedience by punishing the innocent as well as the guilty, chooses to make an example of the blameless Meyerholt. He is imprisoned in the grim Lubyanka and tortured. In a letter to the government, he writes, "I, an old man, was beaten on my back and feet with a rubber hose. Lying face down on the floor, I writhed and screamed like a whipped dog." But Stalin is unmoved and orders the old man shot. He is buried in a mass grave. The inscription reads, "Common grave, number 1, unclaimed remains." Soon after, his widow, the actress Zinaida Reich, is brutally murdered in her apartment, tortured, her eyes gouged out. The mistress of Secret Police Chief Lavrenti Beria then gets the apartment. Andrei Zhdanov, a passionate Stalinist, is now made Stalin's propaganda chief and given charge of all means of mass persuasion: press, radio, cinema, music, and the performing arts. Resembling a pudgy Hitler, Zhdanov comes on strong as the final authority on every minute detail of communication and the arts. He excels at snide phrase-making, servility before the West, homeless cosmopolite, bourgeois aesthete, formalist. He edits the great composer Shostakovich, denounces the brilliant composer Prokofiev. In a special resolution on cinema, he attacks the work of world-renowned Sergei Eisenstein. The director's film, Ivan the Terrible, is seen by Stalin as a metaphor for his own brutal regime. He bans it. Out of favor with Stalin, Eisenstein dies, famous but destroyed. The prophecy uttered by the opera basso Fyodor Shaliapin after encountering Stalin in the Kremlin now comes to pass. The temple of Christ the Savior, symbol of Russian greatness, is dynamited by order of Stalin. In its place, Stalin plans to erect the Palace of the Soviets, a monument to his own greatness. But nature rebels. Like an omen, the massive new foundations sink into Mother Russia's earth. The architects are imprisoned and shot, and the intelligentsia made to clear away the rubble. The project is abandoned. Stalin has indeed created a symbol of his empire, a prophetic one.